Hey, what's up, everyone? Hopefully this is working. Someone let me know if you're in the chat and you can hear this. I just restarted the stream. I don't quite know what that does. But... Oh, shoot. I screwed up. 1 second. There we go. It's great to be here. I'm supposed to be talking to P.F. Jung here soon, so he's going to send me a link. I don't know if he's streaming this or if he's just recording it, but he said that I could go ahead and stream it. So, no, as I was saying, I was arguing with some people on Twitter. I don't know who this Avi guy is. That's probably a Destiny Orbiter and Pisco. It's real funny, sort of, what they're trying to do. Yeah, I did get Pisco to admit, got him to admit that probably dozens of the BLM riots were insurrections. Really? It's interesting. Why didn't the FBI investigate them? Wasn't there a big congressional task force? Why weren't people like Pisco demanding any Democrats that supported them be kept off ballots? Why is he okay with the fact that most of them were let go with the slap on the wrist? They engaged in insurrection, after all. It's odd. You know how I always say they do this? It's the missions to get Trump no matter what. They'll sacrifice anyone in an attempt to... They're all just cogs in a machine, and they'll take out any cog. They don't care. As long as it's worth going after Trump. The machine will keep rolling with any one cog or several cogs that come out. So that's what's going on. Now him and this Avi guy are in this. Will you admit based on the standard legal definition? So what happened was they read a paper. And this guy says, I'm going to look at 3 or 4 court cases in the past. And I've looked at those cases, and this is what I think the definition of insurrection is. And Pisco and Destiny go, that's it. That must be the standard legal definition. That's it. That's what it is. That's the standard legal definition of insurrection. And so this Avi guy suggests, the next time you have a debate, you have to agree that that's the standard legal definition, and then discuss the debate. We have to agree that the definition that they have selectively chosen is the definition that every court uses. We have to agree to that. And then say, now does January 6th meet this? And you'll be like, well, I don't have any proof that this is the standard legal definition. The fact that if this is the standard legal definition, basically no one's ever charged. The fact that we can acknowledge there have been probably hundreds of riots or hundreds of insurrections based on this definition in the last 50 years alone, and yet no one's been charged. Well, that's not true. There was a guy charged in 54. Seems to suggest there's something going on here. And what it is the game is to get you to do this shit in a vacuum. Oh, Trump, insurrectionist. And then people like Destiny go, and by the way, anyone who goes to a Trump rally is effed around and found out because they're supporting an insurrectionist. It's like, but based on your own definition, the Democrats support insurrectionists. Well, and this is how it always works. Trump mishandled classified documents. Okay, all I'm concerned about is a two-tiered system. If we want to say anyone who mishandles classified documents should be locked up, fine. That would probably be thousands of people in D.C. Sounds good? But it only selectively applies to Trump. Is that odd? It's the same with Pisco. Pisco says, I want to redo the debate, Rob. Let's redo the January 6th debate me and you had. I'm not afraid to redo the debate. I absolutely will. What I object to is how they're setting up. Oh, shit. I think some spittle just hit my camera there. That's crazy, wasn't it? Look at that. All right. Anyways, enough of that shit. So I'm going to do this tonight, and then I'm going to take a couple days off. So let's talk to P.F. Jung and see what we got going. What is this? Okay. Got the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse song stuck in my head. I was watching it with my son. It's a banger. Get my headset on there.
Good sir.
Hello. Almost forgot my headset. That's probably necessary.
Listen, I don't have anything of value to say, so it might not be that necessary.
Oh, okay. Well, just me talking. I'm good at that. I can talk.
No.
I am streaming, so keep it TOS. I know you will.
Yeah, right. Oh, all right. Well, I was going to ask you about Netanyahu and.
Oh yeah, no strong R's at the end of any words, please. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so All right, you're already streaming? Okay, because I'm gonna record it locally.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then I'll probably just upload after the fact. All right, well, hello. We've been on, didn't I? I came on one of your panels a long time ago.
I think I was maybe hosting a panel on the Crucible and you came on.
Yeah. And Andrew asked me to come through. Have you engaged, are you familiar with my position on things? Have you engaged with my channel at all?
I've seen you debate Vosh. I know that you're a fan of the writings of Jordan Peterson circa 2015.
Yes. So. Pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. I agree with that. I love
Jordan Peterson.
I have those books. I didn't get, what was the first? Maps of Meaning I don't have. The rest I have.
Maps of Meaning is a 30-hour audiobook, and I got like 10 to 12 hours in. But I've gone through the whole Maps of Meaning lecture series.
Okay.
Okay, hold on real quick. I'm going to hit record, and I believe that's all I need to do. Recording. Okay. But yeah, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing generally, Rob, in terms of the direction of my channel and what my goals are in life and all that. The meme that I put forward is enlightened centrism. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard the term.
Okay.
I could sum this up real quick for you. Find a woman you love, get married, have kids. Bam.
Listen.
There you go.
That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
See, this whole YouTube channel is just a honey trap or what is it, a honey pot for some woman. But then I'm like, wait a minute, what kind of woman am I attracting here if I'm making League of Legends politics videos? I don't know about that. Yeah, I think you're right. But broadly, it's I don't know. I think that to identify as conservative or as progressive is to deny yourself half of the toolkit, so to speak, in terms of solving problems. So I don't know. You're a conservative, right? You would self-describe as a conservative.
I consider myself a populist first and foremost. Then, by that, what I mean is,
I
feel the biggest issue in our society is that our institutions are ran by people that really don't care about the average person. Now, I don't consider populist to mean that there's not like a hierarchy or there's not people that are elite. I still think in a populist system, you need people that are more competent, more skilled, and maybe more wealthy to be people that sort of lead a charge politically and culturally. But I think that those people should at least take the well-being of their citizens into mind. And I don't think we have a system that really does that. And I consider myself conservative as the third political position. The second I would consider myself is libertarian adjacent. So I value sort of like the concepts of freedom. So even though I'm a Christian, for example, I would value sort of your freedom of religion. I think that we should allow same-sex marriage and things like that because my personal beliefs on the morality of those things are less important than the fact that I think our government should be basically as limited as possible. Now, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, so I believe we need to have some sort of government. But I default...
make fun of anarcho-capitalists quite a bit on my channel.
I do my default position in looking at any action requiring sort of questioning whether or not the government should act is no. That we should default to the government should only act basically if it's necessary. So I don't mind a military. I don't mind securing a border. I don't mind sort of taxation going for public services such as roads and things like that. But I think that you need to make the presumptive claim I make anytime you're talking. Should the government do this? Should it give us free healthcare? Probably not. Should it be involved in this or that? I would say I default to no, but I can be persuaded on specific issues. And then finally, I do consider myself a conservative, but as I already mentioned, I think it's ironic I do a lot of these debates. I know you know Andrew and those at the Crucible. They're definitely way more conservative than me. I happen to be a pretty good debater, and I know that a lot of my fans are very conservative. I would say most of them would consider me not very conservative on many issues. Like I said, like gay marriage would be one of them. There's a litany of other issues where, basically the way I wear my faith is I don't like to talk about it much. I do believe that I'm Christian. I believe Jesus is the Son of God. I try to live my life in that manner, but I'm non-denominational. I don't really go to church, and it's not something I talk about often. So even though I am a conservative and I agree with the majority of conservative principles, I'm going to disagree when it comes to sort of valuing freedom and things like that, more importantly. But at the end of the day, being a populist, maybe this is something you can identify with. I find it easy to reach across the aisle for people that are concerned with those big issues to me. So I could listen to a Bernie bro that says, we think we're getting screwed over too. I'll be like, yeah, you are. I disagree with ultimately what many of your solutions would be, but I think that starting off both saying, let's come to an agreement that there are sort of powers that aren't really interested in us, I think that's a good starting point.
You know, I kind of like the populist label. I remember I did a video a while back, something about, I even forgot. It had something to do with populism, and it was very pro of that. And I remember liking the label. And I don't know. First off, what you described, you sound very enlightened centrist by my definition.
Oh.
So that's very good to hear. You may find yourself on the enlightened centrist tier list.
God help me, I'll be getting called by Progressive Victory PAC to sign up with them. No, right. Thank you.
Well, they wouldn't allow you, right? Because you're voting for Trump.
Yeah, I think is that the prerequisite? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, hold on. Well, first off, just a couple things. The main reason I brought you here is to talk about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But we can also talk about other things as well. Populism. I like that concept because I do think the institutions are fundamentally corrupt. In terms of the ideological rot has spread deep enough where you'd still need institutions. Absolutely. You know Eric Weinstein?
Yeah.
He had an interview with his brother Brett 3 or 4 years ago or something like that. And he put it very well. Maybe it was a Lex Friedman interview now I think about it. But he said, there always will need to be an elite. Look at us. We're wearing suits. He's like talking to Lex or his brother. Like, we're wearing suits. We're obviously in the elite. But it's not that you get rid of the elites per se. It's you swap them out for other elites, right? More. I don't know, like you know Tristan Harris, who's the social dilemma. It was the social media documentary.
I haven't seen it, but I know of him.
Yeah. I'm like, put him in charge of whatever the AI regulatory task force is, right? Him and Daniel Schmachtenberger are two. It's like, so you need an elite class for sure. It just.
Well, I know.
I agree, it's ideologically rotted.
Seeing as how I know you're a Jordan Peterson fan, when he talks about hierarchy,
Daily Wire Jordan.
Right, okay. When he talks about hierarchies back in the day, it's something that I really resonated with, where he differentiates. Let me get the terms right. Does he differentiate right and left or conservative and liberal? I think it's right and left. And he basically says that you could break it down based into acceptance of hierarchies, where the right looks at it and says hierarchies are inevitable and necessary, and the left says yes, but they become corrupt if we let them go for too long, and we should still take care of the people at the bottom. And Peterson basically argues both of those are true, and just at different points in times you might favor one or the other based on where you're at. Another thing that I like to think when I think that the reason that we don't get too down on the fact that you could be low on the hierarchy is that we have a society that's so dynamic that there are multiple hierarchies at the same time. So you have the ability to be high on one. For example, you could be a chiseled, great-looking guy, but maybe you're not the smartest guy. Well, there's different hierarchy. Or you might, in my world, I'm from rural Pennsylvania, there are people I know around here that could barely read, but they could tear your card apart and put it back together in a day, right? And so that's the beauty of, like, when we accept, just because you're low on a hierarchy doesn't mean you're less of a person. It just means that there's probably other things, and it's not always going to even out. That's not what I'm saying. But there are still things worth living for, and there's still, things to celebrate. When it comes to sort of the hierarchy of people leading our cultural and political institutions, yeah, there's going to be a hierarchy, and there's no shame in that. I'm somewhere in the middle on that hierarchy. There are people that don't even follow cultural political issues. They'd be near the bottom. But there are people like a Donald Trump, or there are people like a Tucker Carlson, or a Jake Tapper, or a Joe Biden. Like, these people are going to be higher up on that hierarchy, and those people are necessary to sort of move things. So what you want to do is look for people that you think will move them in the direction you want. But it's a mistake to be like, we need to eliminate all of that higher. I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah. And my channel symbol is a yin yang symbol, and that's Peterson gave the context for that yin yang symbol in exactly that way. It's a dialogue between the right and left, and so that's sort of the fundamental basis. But let's talk about Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So I have said publicly that I might vote for Donald Trump. As you might have guessed, I've been lambasted for it.
Sure.
Who could have thought? I want to grill you as if I am on the left. Because as an enlightened centrist, I alternate into whatever fighting mode suits my opponent.
Sure.
Okay? So let's just get right into this.
Okay.
Robert. I think all the people on the left who hate Donald Trump are stupid sometimes because they don't start with the most obvious example of him being a fraudster. And that is him calling, is it the governor of Georgia, asking him to find me 11,000 votes. Sam Harris cites this as the archetypal example of Donald Trump is a insurrectionist, threat to democracy, literally called the governor and said, find me 11,000 votes. How could I or anyone vote for someone who does that?
Did you read the transcript?
I listened to it. I heard it.
Okay, so you heard it or you read it? Okay.
I heard him say, find me 11,000 votes.
So let me put it this way. If I believed that he literally was saying, I know that I lost, I want you to make this up, make up 11,000 votes. That's what I want you to do. I would not vote for him. I would say that that is beyond the pale. I do not believe that's what he was doing. I believe Donald Trump was a man who was articulating to Kemp and Raffensperger in Georgia that he thought there were hundreds of thousands of votes that were fraudulent because they didn't have the proper chain of custody or because that, he thought that they stopped counting votes in the middle of the night and things like that. And I think he's outlining, even in that call, here's a bunch of the things that I'm talking about. You only have to find 11,000. So it'd be the equivalent of this. Say that you're in charge of finances at a company that you work for, and your boss comes to you and says, there's $100,000 missing, and we have this quarterly report tomorrow, and we need to get it found. You need to find $10,000 tonight because tomorrow, if we don't have that at least $10,000, the corporate's going to give us the axe. We're going to be cut. That doesn't mean that he's asking you to steal $10,000. What he's saying is there's this whole pile of things that are wrong. I only need you to find this little bit and that will solve our problem. And I believe that's what he was saying. He wasn't saying, I want you to make something up. He was saying, you've screwed up royally. There are hundreds of thousands of votes that were fraudulent. All you got to do is prove 11,000 of them and that will be enough. That's my interpretation of what he said.
That's your interpretation of it. There's no shred of evidence that they were down 100,000 votes, is there?
Well, that's not entirely true. For example,
But it's mostly true, right?
Well, let me say that. Let me steelman the position, right? I think that there most likely was fraud in the 2020 election. However, there was fraud in the 2016 election and 2012. We understand that. There's always some amount of fraud, right? Sure. The question is, was there enough fraud to sway the election? I don't know. I haven't seen definitive proof of that. What I do know is, for every correct allegation that you ever hear, there will be 100 that are false. So even if theoretically we start under the assumption, yes, it was stolen, that still means when you go online, 99 of the allegations you hear are going to be garbage. I'll give you one. I had someone come on my radio show who was an Emmy award-winning presenter who claimed that there was currently a firefight between Navy SEALs and Dominion Voting's people in Germany. There was an ongoing battle to get access to their server. Now that's clearly garbage, and thousands of people believe that. Now even if the election was stolen, to be duped by something that obvious, it's ugh, what are you doing? So it's my belief that although there are still credible accusations out there, they're not proven. But the question is,
how are they credible accusations?
Well, for example, there's still fighting going on in Georgia. There's a court case that's going on that claims that they're missing ballot imaging for something like 140,000. There's all sorts of the ballots that you could see. There's weird things about them, there'll be duplicates that look like they were filled out the exact same. Even the marks are the same. You'll even see a photocopy of a paperclip in the same position.
Right, hold on, stop. You're saying there is an ongoing court case?
Yes.
When did this?
Well, let me rephrase. I don't know if it's a court case or an internal review, and this is still ongoing. So Raffensperger just the other day was like, "You can't have access to these ballot images until we close down the official investigation." So the investigation.
Raffensperger, is that the Georgia?
Yeah,
AG?
He's like the AG or whatever in Georgia. But let's steelman even further than that. Let's say all of that's not true. Let's say that we definitively could say right now that there wasn't cheating in Georgia. The question still remains: did Trump believe it? It doesn't matter if it was true or not, because for me, it would only be disqualifying if Trump knew that it was false and was asking them to cheat. He's not asking them to cheat if he believes it. If he says, I believe these were stolen and you just need to find 11,000 of them.
Well, hold on. And I get that. I believe this is the defense that I hear most often and I forget who put it in this way, but it's like Trump is so obviously narcissistic that of course he's the type of person who could have genuinely believed that he won. Like, how could I have been beaten by Biden? In his world, sure. But is it not the case that virtually every single one of his people surrounding him, including Bill Barr, including whoever, said, there is no evidence of fraud, you did not win this election, cut this shit out, and he continued to do it anyway?
Yes, it is certainly true that I won't say almost everyone, but there were a lot of people such as Bill Barr. Donahue was one of his lawyers. There were people around him that were saying that. And then there was one of his lawyers, Jeff Clark, that was sort of saying the opposite. There were certainly people around Trump.
People who said the opposite.
Jeff Clark. I think you had people like Sidney Powell, Mike Lindell, and other sort of people.
Okay, but Mike Lindell. That's the My Pillow
He sells
guy.
Awesome pillows, yeah.
Well, my dad bought one, and he said it sucked.
Did he put it in the dryer first? You're supposed to put it in the dryer first.
Oh, are you?
I'll tell him. Maybe he's misusing it. But here's the thing, right?
Sidney Powell in jail or something?
She was charged. I don't know if she's in jail.
Guilty in Georgia Trump election case.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if she's in jail. But it's still irrelevant to whether or not... It wouldn't matter. Like, for example, every one of us could tell you, like, let's say... We're on a panel, right? And I'm the judge. There's 3 judges deciding this panel, right? And we're going to count all the votes from the audience to say who won the panel. And you clearly win by any objective standard. But the ballots all come in that you lose, right? And you could say, there's no way. It's so obvious that I won. And me and the other 3 judges could be like, no, I assure you, you lost. You still may not believe it. And again, like you might say, well, that's terrible judgment on Trump's part to continue to believe something even after the people closest to him told him that that wasn't the case. And maybe that's a reason to not vote for him. Not for me. I think there are bigger things at stake here. But I don't think that proves that he was asking this guy. There's no evidence that, and it's even, I think if you listen to the entire tape of his conversation with Kemp, I think it's clear that he believes that there were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes. And
so why was he saying, find me 11,000?
Because what he's saying is, that's just his way of saying, you only have to find 11,000. I think you screwed up royally. There are hundreds of thousands of fraudulent. If you find me 11,000, I win. He wouldn't give a shit. It's not like he's some ideologue that's like, okay, it'll take 11,000 for me to win, but we need to keep going to make sure that every single fraudulent ballot is found. That's not the way he's thinking of it. But he's just thinking of it like, look, I got screwed over in this state. And by the way, what would happen, just hypothetically, think about this for a second. What if this investigation in Georgia does definitively prove that actually there were 20,000 fraudulent ballots? Then what?
Then I would be saying it was not an insurrection, it was a glorious revolution, because clearly there was evidence that it was...
And it's difficult because I think one of the things you'll see is Bill Barr and all of them were saying, listen, we looked into this, there's nothing here. They didn't really look into it. They didn't, and there's been evidence that came out to that.
Yeah, there's 60 court cases, and all of them were thrown out because they lacked any substantial
That's not true.
Like
not
Trump
all
appointed judges.
First off, most of those weren't brought by Trump and his team. Second, not all were thrown out. There was 4 or 5 that went Trump's way. It just wasn't enough to switch the election.
Whoa. What do you mean they went Trump's way?
Like, for example, in Pennsylvania, there was a question to the legality based on the Pennsylvania Constitution of mail-in ballots. There was an act called Act 77 that was passed during COVID that said that people could do mass mail-in ballots. Previous to that, I think mail-in ballots were only limited to people with like medical issues that had to apply beforehand, things like that. So after the election, there was a challenge filed, and a Pennsylvania Superior Court ruled in favor that these ballots were unconstitutional based on the Pennsylvania Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania later overturned that. So I believe it was the Superior Court of Pennsylvania that ruled that it was legitimate. It was the Supreme Court that then overturned that ruling. And there were several
ballots they did end up getting counted.
They ultimately did, right?
If they were ruled unconstitutional, they wouldn't have been counted.
That's a good question. Right, so no one knows what the remedy would have been.
Too late, right?
Right, it would have probably been too late, which is where the alternate electors situation comes in the first place. There are certain time frames that you have to meet, right? Like what would happen theoretically if Biden gets sworn in? It's January 30th and Biden's already the president. And all of a sudden a court case in Wisconsin's like, oh, wait, never mind. These 17,000 ballots, it's too late. Biden's already been sworn in. So what they do is they file alternate electors in a hope to delay this. That's what the hope was.
I'm getting my trusty notebook out. Forgive
Gotcha.
me if I'm not looking at you while I'm taking.
No, that's so in Georgia.
So the Pennsylvania court.
Yeah.
Initially ruled that the mail-in ballots were unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned them.
Correct. Yes. And I believe, and I don't have the evidence in front of me, but I believe there were 3 or 4 other cases like that. I'm not sure all of them even got overturned. I think some of them stood. But you have to understand, most of these cases weren't like illegals voting by hundreds of thousands. It's like procedural issues and things like that. So let me give you another example. I know Pennsylvania because I had a radio show here. There was a journalist that was my co-host. One of the things that was, here's some things that happened election night on Pennsylvania. Letters went out in the previous day or two to people that had to identify as having COVID for contact tracing. And those letters that went out to them said that if you had received COVID, I think it was 15 days, up to 15 days afterwards, you couldn't leave your house. And one of the penalties was forced hospitalization. Now, the problem was that actually had changed. And so there were unknown numbers of people that got this that would have voted election day that maybe were under the assumption that we're literally not allowed to leave our house or we could be forcibly hospitalized. Sure. Now I can
see the little details like that.
Yeah. And so now that might have been 40 people. It might have been 4,000 people. It might have been, I don't know. But I do know that this was brought up to Rachel Levine, who's now the health secretary. She was health secretary in Pennsylvania before she got promoted by Biden. And at the press conference, I don't even know that this was intentional. It was like an oh shit moment. They were like, oh, so they rushed to send out letters.
Sure.
So anyway,
fair enough. I go ahead.
Okay. Real quick, I'll say this so that's one little thing. Another little thing was there were going to be all these procedural challenges, which everyone knew. So courts had basically told Pennsylvania, you have to keep ballots in separate piles. So some of those piles would be the ballots that were in person. Then ballots that were mailed in that were no problems. Then ballots that were mailed in by the date but were received after the date. That was another question. Then ballots whose signature didn't match the voting registration signature. All of these ballots were supposed to be kept in separate piles because there were pending court decisions that were going to be decided. And the Democrats knew this as well. They game planned this out and said, oh yeah, we're going to file all these court decisions if we lose. What happened was in all of these counties in Pennsylvania, they were like, whoops, we mixed all those ballots together. And that was it. And there's nothing that could be done now because you have no way of knowing now that these ballots are all in one pile. So even if the court would rule, okay, we're not going to count the ones that signatures didn't match, what would you do? You have no record of what those were. So these were the things that were going on in like court decisions that were being filed and arguments that were being made.
What is this? I'm going to have to do further research on this. What would I search to find that?
Oh, Jesus.
Made up propaganda.
Jesus, come on. No. That's what I'm saying. Go to church. They'll tell you. No, just go to like AI or something and search. Just start asking questions such as like, were there separate piles of ballots that were supposed to be kept separate in Pennsylvania that ended up getting mixed together? And the answer is that there were. And there's also...
all right, we'll come back to... That's fine. I'm gathering information.
It doesn't matter anyways. Like, in the grand scheme...
it matters for my elucidation.
Okay.
We won't go into detail.
Do you think...
There's other stuff I want to talk about as well.
Do you think, do you seriously think that Trump was saying, steal me 11,000 votes?
It sounded like a mobster.
I disagree.
Find me 11,000 votes. Now, I admit, I only heard the 29 seconds of him saying that. I'll have to read the broader transcript, but...
Do you think right now Trump still thinks the election was stolen from him?
Yeah, I think
me too. So why would it be any different in Georgia? I think he thought.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. That doesn't matter. If you think you thought, if he's convinced that he's being attacked, like if hypothetically, if you're convinced that someone is threatening you and you shoot them, it does not matter that you felt that you were threatened. The question is, were you actually being threatened? And so him being under the impression that he won, it's like, well, he still was calling up and saying, fine, even though the official account was this, he was saying, find me 11,000 votes. To me, that's obvious evidence of him being
Well, I don't think the
subverting
analogy
democracy.
applies because shooting someone itself is a crime. Asking someone to investigate a crime isn't. Right?
Find me 11,000 votes
Right.
is not asking someone to investigate a crime.
Sure. It's if he believes that these votes were fraudulent and he thinks
Okay.
there was a huge problem. That's my interpretation. I mean,
Fair enough.
obviously, teach their own, but my interpretation of it, if you start under the assumption he legitimately thought it was stolen from him, I don't see how you could think then.
Okay,
that's
fair
what I'm
enough.
saying.
I've heard this. All right. False slate of electors.
Mm-hmm.
Trump literally attempted a coup.
Mm-hmm.
The fraudulent slate of electors.
It's not a coup. It's
Well, that
illegal.
is-
It was a legal theory that they tried to employ. That
Is this called?
was
Was this
unsuccessful.
independent state legislator theory? Or is that different?
It might be. I'm unaware of the specific term of that specific. I believe what that's referring to is sort of. I don't know. I don't even want to hazard a guess.
Okay, well, hold on. He had yes, true or not?
Mm-hmm.
He had false slates of electors in different states ready to replace the ones who voted for Biden to have him vote for himself.
Well, define false. That starts with an assumption.
This is what all the people who come on my stream and tell me that Trump is an insurrectionist tell me. False slate of electors.
So,
As
like,
in not the official appointed electors.
sure, right. That is true, right?
Okay.
But false implies that there's a negative connotation about it that was illegitimate. For
Yeah,
example,
they were not the appointed electors.
you tell me what the crime is there. Then, what's the crime? Is the crime discussing having alternate electors? Is the crime actually those people actually going through with submitting to the vice president and to Congress the alternate slate? At what point did it become a crime?
I don't know. I don't know. It's not necessarily.
Because here's what happened, as I was sort of mentioning before.
And real quick, I just want to be clear, and for people who watch this, who are raging at me right now, Rob, I fully would hope that if the opportunity comes up for someone like, let's say, Destiny, to come on, the three of us could discuss it.
Yeah, I'll
correct?
debate him. I talked to him on a
No,
Spaces.
no. Fuck debate. All right, you two wouldn't even talk to each other. It would be you, Destiny, and me, and I would ask one of you questions, and I go, all right, he just said that. What's the answer to this? Okay, he just said that. What's the answer to this? I don't know. It doesn't have to be Destiny. It can be whoever. But I'm just saying, because I don't know enough. I'm repeating what people have yelled at me on my streams. Okay, but
They don't know
fraudulent. Fair enough. Maybe fraudulent slate of electors.
So let's
Okay.
use the word fraudulent. I don't care.
Fine,
Fraudulent,
fraudulent.
alternate, whatever. But this has been done in the past. So, for example, it was done in Hawaii, right? And 1960 in Hawaii, what occurred was there was a certain time frame that had to be met. And once, I forget what the exact date is, but there's an exact date that they have to count the electors. There's a date they have to be submitted by, then there's a date they have to be counted by, and then it's locked in, and that's it. So what happened in Hawaii in 1960 was it was between JFK and Nixon, and I believe JFK had won the election. Hawaii wasn't going to be determinative, but Nixon narrowly won Hawaii. However, there had to be a recount. And so what happened was they submitted two slates of electors because they weren't sure that the recount would be done by the time the electors had to be in. Now, I think it ended up being done just in the nick of time, but the idea was if the recount was still going, because there were two slates of electors, then hypothetically the vice president would say, wait, I can't pick yet. We can't officially submit this because they're competing electors. We don't know which ones will be the legitimate ones until the state solves sort of their issues. That's the exact same theory that was being used here, that there were states such as Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, where there were legal challenges that were seen to be put forth, but the results of those challenges likely wouldn't be resolved until after the date of when these electors needed to be counted. And the fear was, okay, well, if we ultimately have these court decisions go our way, but there was only one slate of electors submitted, the vice president will still have to choose that slate of electors, and that's it. Now the court challenges can't do anything because they're not going to overturn the election once Biden's sworn in. And so the idea of them being false and what you'll hear, why it was different than Hawaii, I have to look into this. I don't know that this is necessarily true, but apparently the argument is in Hawaii, they were both legitimate in that the state gave the thumbs up to both. But that's not the case in places like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin that had the alternate slates this time. But that hardly seems to matter. Like, why? Let's say me and you protest anything about the U.S. government. Let's say we both live in Pennsylvania and we just we think this sucks. So we attach our names and send a letter to Congress, right? And we're like, we think we're the real electors because this whole damn thing's illegitimate. So we should be the electors. And we say Jordan Peterson's president. Is that a crime? Well, no, because you know what they did with these alternate electors? When they got sent to Congress, they didn't even put them in the same pile. They never even went To like, they didn't come in the official letterhead or anything.
Yeah,
like
because
that.
the reason January 6th happened was so they could interrupt the proceedings to make sure that they did count those false slate of electors. Because the point of January 6th was to prevent the certification of the election. And and by preventing it, then it would have allowed time and opportunity for those fraudulent electors to have been counted. So that was a coup.
Well,
January 6th was an attempt to
The timing argument of that makes no sense whatsoever. Like, right, because there was time for Mike Pence if he wanted to choose the alternate electors, regardless if January 6th happens or not. January 6th was about trying to show that this is my interpretation that doesn't think this was a coup or this was an insurrection or something. Donald Trump and thousands, if not millions of his supporters felt that the election was stolen. And they felt that once the electors were certified, that was it. And no more challenges would be brought forthright. And they thought it was unfair that court cases they thought that showed evidence of fraud, such as Texas bringing a court case that went to the Supreme Court, was not accepted for standing. It wasn't that the facts of the case were looked at. It was, no, Texas doesn't have a right to sue Pennsylvania. Like that was the argument. Yeah. And Texas's argument's like, of course we do, because our voters are disenfranchised if Pennsylvania cheated to get a president. You see what I mean? That was the argument. So that case was never heard. It was just for standing. Anyways, I'm being wordy. What I'm trying to say is then what January 6th was about was frustrated people saying, we think this sucks. We think that this is it. This is sort of the last day we have to let people know, look, there are a huge amount of people in this country that feel this was illegitimate. And we think these concerns need to be investigated. That's completely legitimate, right? What's illegitimate is engaging in acts of violence. You can't do that, right? And so there are questions about why wasn't there proper security and stuff there. We can get into that if you want. But clearly what it was, to me, what it was a riot that got out of control. If they fully intended to go in there and like grab Mike Pence and shake him and go, you have to accept the alternate electors, they could have. They massively overwhelmed police. They got into the Capitol. They basically just milled around. What it wasn't a show of force like violence. It was a show of solidarity for people trying to tell both the Republicans and the Democrats, half this country thinks the election was stolen. And you need to resolve these issues instead of just saying, no, we're not going to look at them for standing, or sorry, the clocks ran out. That's what was going on.
I look forward to you getting destroyed on this by someone smarter than me on this topic.
You bring him on. Destiny didn't do so well the last time I was on a space with him, but you go ahead. I'm going to be debating him soon on it, I think, anyways, so you can tune into that.
Again, fuck debate.
I love debate.
Tagline will be convince the centrist. Okay.
Okay. May I also say, in an attempt to convince you, you are aware that Democrats plotted the exact same thing. They also plotted alternate electors. So there was something called the Transition Integrity Project, and it was led by this lady, what's her name? Rosa Brooks, I believe. But it was basically a bunch of people that had worked in the Democratic Party or the media. So Michael Steele, former head of the RNC, was there. John Podesta, former chairman of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And they plotted out these war game scenarios to instruct the Democrats on what to do regarding the election. And there were 4 scenarios that they plotted out, ranging from Biden wins.
Right, hold up. Mm-hmm. Before I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I believe you.
Okay.
And Russiagate was a complete fucking hoax, and I know that. So
okay.
I'm not putting that past the Democrats. I want to move into a separate thing, because whether or not he's an insurrectionist, Donald Trump, okay. I suppose that is relevant, but honestly, it's like when people say he's an insurrectionist, the implication is then he's a dictator, he's evil, he's fascist. Mm-hmm. Okay, my thing is always, so then walk me through the doomsday scenario. He gets let's say he wins this next election. Now what? Who's he going after? Is he going after Mexicans? That doesn't make sense. He's got 50% Hispanic support, and he's against illegal immigrants. And I've never heard any major political not any major. That's wrong. I've not heard any Trump-related figure say it's not illegal immigrants we have a problem with, it's immigrants in general. There are, of course, there's increasingly ethno-supremacist faction on the right, and it's growing, which is problematic. But there was nothing at the RNC, for example, that indicated that people are fundamentally anti-immigrant. In fact, just the opposite. Trump says that in his speech several times. We want people to come in, but they have to come in legally. I believe that. Okay. So the question is, I'm more concerned with the details of balancing Trump versus, well, now it's Harris because it's no longer Joseph R. Biden.
For now, we'll see if they switch her out too. Yeah.
That's fair. One of my biggest issues is immigration. I think we should close the border, essentially. I mean, we should still have trade and all that, but it's ridiculous what's happening on our border. And Trump told the Republican Party to reject the bipartisan border bill, which would have solved this issue. So why should I believe for a moment that Trump is actually concerned with the border rather than using it as a political tool, given that he didn't get the wall built, even though he had control of Congress and Senate for 2 years? So he's a fraudster, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. All right. So let's go with this. First off, can we agree that it's a binary choice, that you're going to vote for Republican or Democrat? You're going to vote for Harris or Trump?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So if you're taking any issue, then you have to ask which side is better. And I think it's indisputable that Trump would be better on the border. So I think that already on this aspect, Trump should get your vote there. But let's talk.
I don't believe that yet because he rejected the bipartisan border bill.
Okay. But that at least opens me up to offensive reasons why the Democrats are bad as well. So first off, did you read the border bill, the bipartisan border bill?
I read a couple bullet points on it.
Okay. So the problem was that bill probably did more harm than good, and it would have entrenched itself as law for at least 3 years, which would have meant if it was passed, Donald Trump would have been hamstrung for 2 years when he comes into office, that he would have been unable to make like real credible changes. So that's the first thing. Now this bill, I can't remember all the specifics of it, but there were all sorts of crazy like provisions in it, such as we were allowed to have up to 5,000 people a day come in for so many days before it triggered the emergency provisions. Even after those emergency provisions were triggered, 1,700 a day were allowed in after that. The people in charge, such as Mayorkas, were allowed to give special exemptions to people that came. So that meant that already the people we could see for 3.5 years that were totally fine with the border situation, that said it wasn't a crisis, it still would have ultimately been up to them. They could have said, never mind, we're giving special exemptions to the people that came today. That would have been really bad to enshrine in law. It gave millions upon millions of dollars to the very NGOs that are facilitating the migrants coming in the first place. So what happens is a bunch of these NGOs that are basically working as the voice of the government. I don't know if you know how NGOs work, but basically what happens is things that the government's legally not allowed to do, they'll just give money to a non-governmental organization that just goes out and
like
does
what?
that.
What's an example of one of these NGOs?
I forget their names. Talk to Andrew Wilson. He has a bunch of their names. But what happens is, like, if you go watch, there's a really good video that I think you'll like of Brett Weinstein at the Darien Gap.
Yeah.
Like, watch his conversation with Tucker Carlson about this, and he talks about these NGOs are basically down there that are getting government money, and they're instructing people exactly on what to say when they get to the border, exactly on where to go, exactly on what to do. And that's what's facilitating a lot of this, that these NGOs that are paid by government money go down and do these things. So all of this would have been bad.
That's bad. I hate that.
Yeah, and that was enshrined in the law. That was in this law. Now, at the exact same time that this bipartisan bill was, let's talk about why it was bipartisan. Before Donald Trump, did any of the old guard Republicans care about the border? No. The Mitch McConnells of the world, they didn't talk about it. The Lindsey Grahams.
Maybe.
So in the Senate, it was bipartisan. That's true. But the House had passed their own bill, which they wanted, and the House bill was much more stricter on immigration. Way stricter. And the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate were like, no, instead we'll work with the Democrats for this bill that basically does next to nothing. And it has some good, but some bad. And it would have enshrined itself into law for multiple years, which would have stopped a Republican House, Senate, and President from making significant changes in the future. Lastly, you have to compare that to what the Democrats did. If you're going to say that they were cynical because 3.5 years into a Biden presidency, they turned down a, quote, bipartisan bill, well, what does that say to the Democrats and Harris, who was the VP and was one of the people that Biden tasked with being one of the point people on the border? They said for 3 years it wasn't a crisis. They said, don't believe your lying eyes. They didn't do anything. They ran on the promise of decriminalizing.
And Kamala was the border czar.
That's right.
Now she's running.
Although
allegedly she was not the border czar.
Well, that's not an official title.
50 times.
Right, yeah.
I know.
But
okay.
so the problem is, like, it's clear that they're cynical. And it's just like this. Did you see this story yesterday? Gavin Newsom all of a sudden came out and said, we're tired of funding these local institutions that aren't dealing with homeless people. Now we're going in and cleaning out this encampments. Right, election year. Election year, now the same dude that allowed these encampments to get out of control, now in election year, he's saying, never mind, we're going to take care of it this year, and then next year it'll go back to being the same. So clearly, it is indisputable, even if you blame Trump for this bill not getting passed, it's indisputable that the Democrats are far worse.
Let's go deeper then. Let's go deeper. Take me deeper, Rob. Okay. Why is illegal immigration bad?
Because I'll give you my theory on it. I think that these institutions are corrupt and are ran by people that basically see themselves as a separate species than us. And so they see themselves as powerful entities that we're basically just their serfs. And they want to return to neo-feudalism. They want a globalist society where it's the haves and have-nots. And I believe they think the biggest impediment to that is sort of middle-class people in first world countries, particularly the United States. And so when you look at it that way, so many of their policies that are designed to hurt small business owners, designed to hurt working class people, designed to erode national borders, national pride, etc., all starts to make sense. So the reason that illegal immigration is bad, the first reason is because it erodes our national identity. It changes our culture.
Who would be an example of an individual in the U.S. government that fits that description?
Pretty much most of the people at the top level of our government.
Can you name one and anything they've said?
Sure.
That would reflect this.
Chuck Schumer, for example, just said here a couple weeks ago that the ultimate goal is to give these people a path to citizenship. That was after years of saying, of course we're not going to give them the right to vote. Why would he say? Why would he go against everything? In fact, they called you a racist conspiracy theorist if you said the plan is to get them in here and to vote. They were like, that's great replacement theory. That's racism. You can't say that. Chuck Schumer just announced that's the plan, to give them the right to vote, right? And we can see it's not just government, though. This is sort of the idea. This is why there's been a cultural war on the term nationalism. They don't want you to have civic pride. They don't want you to have national pride.
Yeah, they want to erode. Globalism depends on not having strong national identities.
And as a Jordan...
Yanis Varoufakis.
There you go.
He's the finance minister, or former finance minister of Greece. He's a very popular media figure. Not a U.S. politician by any stretch of the imagination. But he does reflect the attitude, and the attitude that you just said, the neo-feudal, techno-feudal type, that's exactly, although he coined the term techno-feudalism, which I think is different. But he said explicitly, borders are a sign of failure of the human species.
And you see this...
And I believe that attitude does pervade the government, but I don't have any, the U.S. government, but I don't have examples of that.
Yeah.
But you just cited Chuck Schumer, so I'll have to look into that further.
And furthermore, I think this permeates into a bunch of other stuff that I would call sort of cultural Marxist, that 2016 Jordan Peterson would be talking a lot about. Like, what's up with this war on sort of traditional masculinity? What's up with the demonization of white people? What's up with the demonization of, right-wing ideas or conservatism or Christianity? All of this, for me, is designed to break people down, to be malleable, to take away their individual identity and to make them part of this sort of global sort of haves versus have-nots.
Global homo agenda?
I didn't say that.
No, I know.
Try not to get kicked off YouTube.
Chuck Schumer, immigrants, and NGOs facilitating organizations.
Now, let me be honest. I don't think that there's...
I hope you've been on this whole time.
So I'm just to be clear, I'm not saying that Chuck Schumer or anyone else came out in the United States and said, by the way, we're seeking to erode national borders so we can have a feudalist society.
Of course.
But what they're saying goes in line with...
Never once explicitly said, hey, the goal is to kill all the Jews.
Correct. Exactly.
Extreme example. Sorry. What's it called when Hitler inevitably comes up in every...
there's
some rule for it.
Yeah.
Sorry if I pulled that there.
Yeah, but no. But that's my belief. There's other reasons that mass illegal immigration's bad. Drives down wages. They directly compete with low-skilled labor, which, by the way, tends to be people of color in the inner city.
That's fair. That makes sense and is less interesting than the globalists destroying the national identity, which I do have sympathy for as a possibility and likely.
Now, let me be clear. I'm not an ethno-nationalist. I'm not. But what I do understand is you can't take in the amount of people we are without a significant seismic change in culture. And you can't change that rapidly. You really can't. And that's where we're starting to see a lot of problems.
I agree. Okay. Trump said he's going to go after the media and crack down on free speech. Mm-hmm. That concerns me, Robert. Why should I vote for someone who said he's going to go after the media and crack down on free speech?
Well, what does crack down on free speech mean? What did he say?
Going after the media, expanding the libel laws to be able to sue journalists.
That's a little concerning. I think that I haven't seen exactly what he said, but I do think it depends. Certainly libel should be a crime, but I would have to see exactly how he wants to expand them. I think that one of the things we should do when we talk about the scary Trump man being elected is ask ourselves, well, what did he do in his first 4 years? Well, in his first 4 years, he said mean things about the media, but he did almost nothing. In fact, Barack Obama, before him, had gone after more whistleblowers that had spoke to the media than all presidents combined. He was terrible when it came to going after whistleblowers that were communicating with the media.
Yeah, didn't he torture Chelsea Manning or something like that?
I don't know about that. James Rosen, who was a reporter for Fox News, he spied on him and his father. I don't know if it was wiretap, but they listened into phone calls with him because he was critical of Obama. There's no allegations of Trump doing any of that. In fact, what we see through the Twitter files is, though it is technically true that these agencies that were there under Trump were working with social media to censor certain points of view, they were almost always against Trump and Trump supporter type people. Or at least they were against people that were critical of agencies like the FBI.
Trump also said that he was going to prosecute Hillary Clinton, put her in jail, and then as soon as he got elected, he's like, nah, not really.
That's right. That. And let me be
interesting.
And I think so much of the fear mongering of Trump is Trump's sort of a blowhard. Like, this is my theory on Trump. You tell me if you disagree. I think Trump's the type of dude that comes from the real estate world. And let's say you were a real estate tycoon that was buying for a piece of property next to Trump. He'd like bury you. He'd put you out of business. And he'd say the worst things about you at the board meetings and everything. And then as soon as the deal was done, he'd be like, come on, PF, let's go out for dinner. Bring your wife. How's it going? Like, he looks at it like it's all a game. You know, because now he'll say about Hillary, beautiful Hillary. She wasn't that, like, and it's like, if you listen to him, now I thought it was kind of dumb that he went with this whole lock her up thing. But what did he do? Nothing. And compare that to what was done to him. Like, it's so, like, I hear these Democrats say all the time, what if Trump weaponized his DOJ to go after his opponents? That's literally what's happening right now under the Biden administration, you know?
All right, fair enough. Let's step back here.
Okay.
Is there not a significant risk of violence when it comes to mass deportations, which Trump has promised to do?
Yes, but that would, right? I guess we do our best to mitigate it, but we don't say that we don't try to make policies that's good for our country because immoral people will act immorally. Similarly, if you're
I agree with that.
If you're a staunch pro-life person, you wouldn't say, well, we can't end abortion because people will commit violence. You just...
That's fair. I don't believe there's a significant risk of...
I don't think so.
Because the whole idea that Trump is like, well, he's a fascist, he's like Hitler. It's like, who is the group he's targeting? It's because it's certainly not race-based, because, again, I believe he's up to like almost 50% support for Hispanics. And I believe something like 40 to 50% of Hispanics support mass deportation.
Well,
so this idea that he's targeting brown people is like the biggest fucking joke I've ever heard in my life.
Here's the real story. He ain't going to mass deport. He's not going to. He's going to talk a big game just like he did in 2016.
Well, then, so he's not going to solve the immigration problem?
Nope.
Well, who's going to solve it then?
No one. He'll just be better than the opposition.
Well, what's going to happen then if
the
legal immigration crisis is not solved?
He will do little mitigating steps, like securing the border is the first step. He'll try that. He'll probably be stymied by his own party and by Democrats. But the point is, I'll tell you right now, I'm black-pilled on if Trump gets elected. My big thing's corruption. I think that the FBI should be disbanded for the corruption they've engaged in. You know what Trump promised to do? Build them a big, beautiful new building in D.C.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
You know, so it's like, I think that what ultimately will happen if Trump wins, which I'm skeptical that he'll win, but if he wins, I think that it'll be much like the first term. There'll be a bunch of big promises that it's stymied by his own people.
Hold on real quick. You said you're skeptical if he wins. Are you saying that because you're honestly skeptical or because you believe that's important to say so that people get out and vote? Because if you say, we'll definitely win this, then people get lazy and they don't go out and vote.
No, I would say Trump has like a 5% chance of winning. I've been consistent. I don't think he could overcome ballot harvesting. Like in Pennsylvania here, like John Fetterman won running away. And after that debate performance, you'd be like, "Oh my goodness!" Like this.
Well, Dr. Oz is
he sucked.
Repulsive individual.
Yeah. He sucks. Dr. Oz sucks. That's true. Hey, true story. I met Dr. Oz at a sort of Republican rally, and I had to stand in line to shake his hand. And his little assistant guy is like, "Hey, you want me to take your phone and take a picture with him?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I go up to shake his hand, and I was like, "Hey, I just want to say I think you're terrible." And the dude that was taking the picture, you could tell his face went from a smile to a frown. I did tell him, though, I was like, I'm still going to advocate for you. I hope you prove me wrong. I was like, I hope you talk to the people around here and see what like the average people here in rural Pennsylvania are about. And I hope that you prove me wrong. I think you'd be better in Fetterman, but I just want to let you know I strongly advocated against you and thought you were a terrible candidate. And to his credit, he was like, I appreciate the honesty.
Hey, fair enough. Okay. All right. So fair enough. We can move on to something
Okay.
else. My biggest concern with Biden was the fact that he was a rotting corpse. Mm-hmm. No more Biden.
It's true.
The next most rotting corpse is Donald Trump.
It's true.
Is his age not a significant problem and risk factor I should be concerned about?
No, because oftentimes what we do is we talk about things that we value, such as, let me give you an example, an analogy, diversity. Diversity is our strength. Well, what is it about diversity that's really our strength? Well, it's actually diversity of thought. That's where the strength lies.
Yep.
No one cares if you have 10 people of 10 different shades of color that all think the same. That's not diversity that matters. The same's true with age. When we say age is a problem, why is it a problem? Well, it's a problem because there could be cognitive decline, because you could slow down. If Donald Trump getting shot, standing up, pumping his fist, yelling fight, and then giving a rambling near 2-hour speech at the convention where it looked like he could have went for another 6 hours doesn't prove that he's not someone who's suffering severely from energy, I don't know what else will. And then when you compare that to Kamala Harris, would you rather have someone who's old, maybe a little bit of a kook like Trump, or someone like Kamala Harris who lied to your face for 4 years about Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline, along with the entirety of the media, the entirety of the Democratic Party and administration? I'll take the old guy with energy any day over the people that lied to us about the rotting corpse that they tried to prop up for the Weekend at Bernie style for the last 4 years.
Well said. Trump is too pro-Israel.
Yeah?
He basically sucks Netanyahu's agenda. Mm-hmm. That angers me.
Agreed.
I think Netanyahu is a disgusting war criminal.
I'll be honest, I don't know about that, probably. I just don't give a shit. My feeling is that there's so many significant problems in our country, and it stems from the fact that our elected leaders don't focus on the people of this country that need help. I'm tired of trying to be the world police. Even if it was a time and a place to say the world needs a superpower and we need to be the world police, the problem is our leadership has proved themselves or corrupt or incompetent over the last 20 years to the point where we literally put trillions of dollars in Afghanistan, and within 8 hours of leaving, and we were told by 17 different generals told us, we're winning the war, we're winning the war. It took 3 days of us to leave to where the Taliban completely overran the country. And so I think that for me, Israel-Palestine, I say, I have my preference on who I think's more legitimate. I think both sides are terrible. I think they've both done incredibly heinous things. But I just think that we shouldn't be involved. That's my policy.
Okay, anti-Semite. Anti-Semite.
Yeah, right.
That makes you... So, got it. Believing that both sides are equally heinous, which they are, absolutely.
Well, I don't know. I said equally, but I can't prove one or the other. I'm willing to default to that.
Right, fine. I'll say the Israeli settlers are as much disgusting degenerates as Hamas, bar none. Anyone who praises someone who kills innocent children is fucked up. And Ben Gvir, I don't even want to get. I'm not even going to. It upsets.
Can I say this real quick? On. Okay, go ahead.
I agree. We should not be the world policeman. But that makes you anti-Semitic because the idea is, well, Israel's our greatest ally. We must protect them no matter what. I say, fuck that. And I would be nice to vote for someone who had that opinion. But alas, doesn't matter. It's almost irrelevant here because the Democrats and Republicans are equal dogs.
Isn't that funny? There's all the important issues, right? Like all the foreign wars, they agree. Remember 2008, bail out the banks? They agree. It's like the important shit. It's always the establishment, Republicans and Democrats agree.
Yeah.
I'll just say this.
Like populism is the right attitude.
That's right. Now, I will say this just about Israel-Palestine. Can you understand from someone's perspective like me, who, don't get me wrong, I follow politics, but I work 80 hours a week doing home health care. This is just a hobby of mine, basically. Israel-Palestine's such a massive topic that it's like, when I know my answer at the end is going to be like, even if I 100% come to the side, yep, this side's the aggressor, they're worse, it's not going to change what I think our government should do, which is nothing.
Sure. Fine.
So I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know.
That is the attitude you should have. I just want you to be aware you will be called an anti-Semite for that.
That's fine. I don't give a shit.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. What do you think of Destiny and Andrew Wilson's debate?
I thought both sides could have done better. I'm actually less impressed with Destiny, and I'll tell you why. This is his big issue, and he spent so much time researching this, and I was not very impressed. Should Andrew have gave a definition of the term insurrection? I would have. I'll be honest, and I debated Pisco on this, and I did. I think it wouldn't have hurt Andrew, even if he just made one off the top of his head. Yeah, insurrection, a group of people with the serious intent to overthrow the government that acts with violence to achieve it. There, insurrection.
It's so funny because Destiny and Andrew Wilson it's like they're archetypal for me in terms of something that Jordan Peterson said, which is he talks about how atheists and religious fundamentalists have the same problem. They're stuck in this idea of like logic and propositional truth as being the ultimate form of truth and whatnot. And so what inevitably happens is they get so semantic in their debate. Well, define an insurrection. I won't define it. They spent like 20 minutes. Well, can you insurrect against a state? Blah blah blah. It's like it never gets to the broader issue or the bottom of the issue. It turns into these semantic word games. But they're both, and it's to Destiny's disadvantage because he operates in that hyper semantic linguistic framework, and Andrew knows how to wrestle within that. I would say at least as good as Destiny.
Yeah,
so, but they never really got to the bottom of anything.
Well, here's the thing.
Andrew never defined insurrection, so it's kind of like.
But it doesn't matter. Andrew wins. Andrew wins the debate, and here's why. What is the greater?
I would say you can win a debate and not be on the right side. Like Jordan Peterson has lost debates with Matt Dillahunty for sure, but Matt Dillahunty never addressed Jordan Peterson's fundamental point, in my opinion.
Well, we get into. I'll try to make this. It's brevity is not my strong suit, but I'll try my best. Okay. Where Destiny loses the debate is he overbroadens the definition of the term insurrection. And so at the end of the debate, when Andrew's like, "So you're telling me, based on your criteria, if a bunch of hippies get together and say, hey, we think that weed should be legal federally," and so they all go to a march, a protest, and they're all protesting, and then 2 or 3 of those hippies start fighting with the police, that's an insurrection. And the problem is that it does like Andrew doesn't have to define insurrection to say, dude, what you're saying broadens it. Now, why does this matter? Why are they having this debate? Well, the debate's occurring in a broader conversation about insurrection in our country, particularly with Destiny, who goes on Piers Morgan, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth or say anything too crazy here, but needless to say, he's very callous at the death that occurred at the Trump rally. He's maybe suggested he's not so sure if he wanted Trump to succumb to his wounds or not. So, I mean, these are some very inflammatory rhetoric. He's saying the cost of even being at a rally for someone who supported an insurrection could mean that you get killed and you should have seen it coming. Given that, if his definition...
Yeah, that's sociopathic.
That's crazy.
Very much so.
And so then when you hear, okay, dude, then what's your definition of insurrection? And he's like, well, basically a bunch of hippies that got together and were upset about weed. If two of them clashed...
That's the example of Andrew knowing how to wrestle semantically to get Destiny's... That was Destiny's lowest point. And then I think Andrew's lowest point was not ever providing a definition.
But in the grand scheme, that means that Destiny loses the overarching debate. Now, what didn't occur with Andrew, and what I would have done, I would have pointed out real-world situations of Democrats that have engaged in insurrection. So the clips that Andrew played at the beginning, that second clip was from Destiny debating me. And back in 2000, before January 6th, so this is like June of 2020, right? I was talking to Destiny about the George Floyd riots. And he said to me, here's a couple things he said. I said, I suspect, it's conspiracy theorists in me that suspects that Democratic mayors and governors are allowing these riots to occur because they think it looks bad for Trump, right? And they think it'll force Trump to be heavy-handed. And then they could say, oh, look, he's a fascist. And Destiny said, that's not a conspiracy at all. Absolutely. Then he said, actually, violence is the other side of the coin to voting. That's what he said. So basically, as long as it's against...
what?
Well, what he was saying, we were talking specifically about Black Lives Matter, Antifa, rioting for George Floyd. And his only caveat was, you can't destroy private property. Public property is fine. So if you feel that there is an issue that your voice isn't being heard, that the government's not solving your issue, just like voting's one side of the coin to solve that, the other side of the coin is violence, which is, according to Destiny's definition, an insurrection. So Destiny has publicly celebrated insurrectionists that benefited his side at the time, and then he takes, not only is he taking the opposite take, he's taking the hyperbolic opposite take to saying, oh, but when the other side does it, they deserve to be shot. Or, let me be clear, he'll say, I didn't say they deserve to be shot. I'll say they're effing around and finding out, and if they get shot, they should have seen it coming. I mean, to me, that's the debate in a nutshell. And the reason that this insurrection discourse is occurring is because the definition that's being used by all these people is so broad that the smarter ones of them, like Pisco, will have to admit, yeah, there were dozens of times during Black Lives Matter that Democrats engaged in insurrection. Then the obvious question is, did you call it out? Did you demand an FBI investigation?
What's an example that Pisco would agree with?
He would probably agree, for example, with the Chaz Zone. He would probably agree May 31st, 2020, where you had a bunch of left-wingers that were pissed about George Floyd.
Yeah, I know Chaz. Yeah.
Well, no, this isn't Chaz. This was in D.C. on May 30th, where there was barricades set out outside the White House in Lafayette Park, and they charged through those barricades, used weapons, injured 14 or so officers, burned down a federal building that was used as like a break room for people that were there. He'd probably agree with that.
May 30th, Washington, D.C.?
May 30th, 2020, yeah. I can send you the link afterwards. I was just talking about this. Now, he'll quibble. He'll say, well, were they really trying to get into the White House? But based on the definition that was just given, that's irrelevant. And there are other... Now, hopefully I'll get to debate him on this and we'll get the specifics of what he's saying. But my God, think of the logical extension of what Destiny's saying. Iraq war protests and Vietnam protests would have been insurrections, as long as there were people that clashed with police there. They were there collectively for a single reason. They didn't like U.S. policy in the war, right? They pre-planned to go there. They wanted to change policy. There were acts of violence or intimidation that occurred, and it was public. That's it. That's an insurrection. So does that... Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is an example of syndrome, where when everyone's super, no one is. When everything's insurrection, nothing is.
That's exactly the point. And the point, from my perspective...
Now, I want to say, once again, I am the neutral, spineless centrist here, just giving you a platform. I'm irresponsibly platforming robnoerr.
That's right.
An
anti-Semite. Platforming an anti-Semite. Yeah.
When I should have some intelligent, good faith left-winger here to push back against you.
Who are you going to find? Oh, by the way, the Crucible just raided me, so they're saying hi. Thank you, Crucible crew.
Ah, yes.
So now we have to talk well and answer in the Crucible.
Are you Eastern Orthodox, or what kind of Christian?
No, I'm non-denominational.
Are you aware that makes you a heretic in the eyes of the Eastern Orthodox Church?
I believe I am, but I think Andrew said they don't take a stance on whether or not I go to heaven or hell. They're not interested in that.
Okay, well, in that case, fuck it. I don't care what they think then. If I'm going to heaven anyway, then who cares, right? Fuck the Eastern Orthodox Church if I get to go to heaven no matter what. I find that hard to believe, though.
I don't think you get to go no matter what. I just think they don't think that's...
Sure,
they take a stance on it.
If I get to say Jesus was non-binary, like many Protestant preachers,
that might be a deal breaker. I don't know.
That's fair. All right. Well, those are all my questions that I had written down.
I got a question for you. How about that?
Please. Yes.
Okay. Based on this conversation or others you had, if you had to vote today and you're not abstaining or voting third party, who would you choose? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump?
My gut intuition is Donald Trump still.
Here's the
but think about how little resistance I put up to anything you said. You could be just spewing misinformation.
That's true.
Right?
I didn't even give the best case. Here's the best case for Trump. Individual presidents come and go. Individual FBI leaders come and go. If you believe that these systems are corrupt and institutions are corrupt, what you need is someone that has a chance to out them for that corruption. And even though Donald Trump didn't drain the swamp in 2016, what he did was make it so the average person could absolutely see that so many of these institutions that we trusted, like the media or the FBI, are absolutely in it together. Absolutely, definitively.
Yeah, permanent state.
That's right.
I believe the permanent state is real. I believe they have an anti-nationalist agenda.
Sure.
I believe they have international interests. I believe that it should be dissolved. I believe the FBI should be utterly gutted. I'm all for that. I think that's good. I think the executive branch should be brought back to heel under the single executive. I don't think the executive should be able to overturn the Clean Air Act, but I do think the executive should be able to tell the executive branch what regulations it should do. I'm very sympathetic to a lot of that. And I really think populism is a great term.
Trump sucks in a million ways, but he does represent...
Especially in Netanyahu's way.
Look, I can give you a bunch. He bombed Syria. He spent like crazy, right? He made a bunch of promises that took out
Soleimani.
He said he hired the best people and then hired people like John Bolton. How are you going to hire him to drain the swamp? Mike Pompeo, right? So yeah, I'm with you. But for me, it's just that greater question. If we keep putting people in there that are prodigies of the swamp, prodigies of the forever state, what's our expectation? And so I'm afraid if Trump loses this time, the next election you're likely to see the equivalent of Bush versus Clinton. It'll just be two establishment puppets, and we'll go back to choosing from them. I would take someone on the left that I thought was like, I'd take a Cornel West over Jeb Bush.
I've donated to Cornel
West. Right. Now I disagree with a lot of what he says, but he represents someone who I think legitimately cares about the people. I think he does, and he's outside that scope of that forever state. So that's why you should vote for Trump. Even if you don't like him, that's why you should vote for him.
Side question. Do you think that the assassination attempt on Donald Trump involved foul play?
By definition, yeah. But do I think it involved
conspiracy?
So here's as far
in the actual definition, not the way it's pejoratively used.
Anything's on the table at this point, given that at this point it would be such a shocking level of incompetence, it may be worse. At this point, you might say, I would rather the Secret Service have been in on it than to have been so incompetent.
That bad?
Because then is it really, did we just send the signal to China and Russia? By the way, if you put a sniper on a sloped roof, we're screwed. There's nothing we could do. Like, is that now my best guess is if there was, if it wasn't just gross incompetence, this is how it played out. That they were aware that the temperature had been rising and there were specific threats against Trump. They didn't act upon it. They didn't weaponize like MK Ultra them, but they purposely chose to have holes in his security, knowing that inevitably there was a good chance some lunatic would try something. So it's fun. Now, is it possible that they trained this dude? Yeah, but I would say the most likely scenario of them being involved is intentional lack of security, knowing that the inflammatory rhetoric would lead to a chance on his life, and it happened. And I mean, it's so bad. And I don't want to hear anyone complaining about conspiracy theories. The problem is when someone gives you an explanation of such incompetence that it, like, even the average person's like, wait a minute, that can't be true, and the story keeps changing. You can't decry people head going places that you wouldn't want them to go.
Well, it's funny because the left wingers and I think, was it Joy Reid who said this? Was like, it's just, you're telling me that he got shot and then he stood up to take a photo op. Like, something doesn't add up. You know what I would have said to them? I would have said, you know what? I totally understand. We should investigate this and not rule anything out of the table. Maybe it was staged. I can't say, even though it's very odd, given that someone died, especially. It's like, even though that's an extreme claim, in my opinion, I would not for a second say, you're insane and should be silenced for asking for it to be further investigated. That's insane to me. To say, to even question as someone who believes it was staged, which is insane in my opinion. But like, no, they should be allowed to question, and we should encourage an investigation to see if it was staged. Just like we should encourage investigation to see which type of psychedelic did they feed that fucking kid to get him to, do the
suicide
numbers.
Mission,
when the numbers got broadcast, like in COD Black.
Well, what I always say to people is this: it's not my fault I don't trust these institutions; it's theirs. When they have lied to you so many times and have exhibited such a double standard and incompetence and corruption, how can we take them at face value anymore? You can't. And listen, you should feel this way the other way. Like, let's say you're listening and you hate Trump and you're going with Harris, or you were going to go with Biden. Like, you should want questions answered, because the Secret Service is tasked with protecting them too, right? And if they're able to be swayed by Iran or they're incompetent grossly, you should say, hey, everything's on the table. We want a thorough investigation, because I think that one thing that I'm trying to really get out there is I don't give a shit. I absolutely hate the politics of the establishment Democratic Party. Find me once ever wishing death on any of them. It just hasn't happened. I think that you need to have a baseline of, like, before we could have any sort of discussion or dialogue, there has to be this baseline of, you can't say you want me dead based on my words.
Although you and I and everyone watching knows full well that if an attempt was made on Biden's life, or worse, Biden fell down some stairs and hit his head, there would be an endless number of jokes from everyday conservatives who would be like, shame that staircase wasn't a few steps longer, It's like, and you know what? It's called the dark side of humanity. It exists, but however, it is a very different thing. I even though people would have made those jokes about, it's a shame Biden didn't fall further, or Trump turned his head at the last minute, there are really very few people, even the more sociopathic ones, who would be like, yeah, the innocent father who died deserved it as well. It's like, that's fucked up beyond belief.
Yeah.
But once again,
agreed.
We will not shit talk people who are not here to.
Yeah. And I try to give even those people the benefit of the doubt. I do, to say, like, maybe it's just mean-spirited jokes in the heat of the moment. For me, the line is quite literally, if you're literally saying and truly believing that you want people to die that you disagree with politically, that's beyond the pale. If you're making crappy jokes, I'll shake my fist and be angry for a week or two, and then that's it.
Like libs of TikTok canceling the fucking Home Depot lady. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That's fucked up beyond all belief.
I understand why they're doing it, and I'm not going to interfere with them, but I'm against it.
Sure, I understand why people I understand why people say Trump should die. That doesn't mean it's fucking right. And it's certainly not right to cancel some fucking minimum wage worker at Home Depot. That's exactly. It's like it's almost out of a movie of, like, you literally became the thing you sought to destroy.
Well, there is a difference.
Fuck cancel culture. Fuck this.
There's a difference, right? There's a difference for canceling someone because they gave the okay sign, or they said that Democrats were like Hitler, versus canceling someone because they say, I wish that assassin would have killed Trump.
You know what? There may be a difference, but that slope is so slippery that it's just so obvious to be an absolutist on this.
That's my take on it.
Workers for making a stupid fucking post
that is my take on it. But I'm probably wrong in this.
TikTok.
here's the thing, right? I agree with your take on that. That's how I am. You'll never see me do that. You won't even see me report a channel. And the only time I would ever report a channel is if I think they're like exploiting children, or if they're literally like planning some mass homicide.
Yes,
right.
That
but other than
culture should be for. Yes.
Right.
Pedophiles.
But anything outside of that scope, even if it's heinous stuff being said, I'm not going to report. But you have to understand the argument from my side, that what more right-wing people than me will say, and they're probably right, is like, we tried it your way, Rob, and the left wouldn't stop. They canceled us for everything, and they have the institutional power. So we can't even give a speech. We can't go listen to Ben Shapiro on a college campus without the fire alarm getting pulled and us getting mobbed and shit.
Yep.
And the only way it will ever change is if we
cancel minimum wage workers.
Well, I agree that's
fuck that.
I agree. I'm not for that either. But
You
what
should
I
be
said,
calling it out, to be honest.
well, I did. And what I said was, I told the left over and over again that that's inevitably what's going to happen, and that people like me that are more moderate in this are going to lose. And my audience, I will guarantee right now in my chat, if I asked, I guarantee the 600 people that are in my chat right now, 580 of them disagree with me and you. And what can I do about it?
Tools. They're fucking.
I'm just
tools,
telling you. That's the truth. It went so far, and
let's cancel. Yeah, look, the institutions. Again, populism based. I will probably vote for Donald Trump. Fuck the people in charge of the institutions. If you choose to lump the left as if 150 or 120 million people in this country can all be under one category, and then you go after the fucking minimum wage worker who made a comment on Facebook and think, yeah, this is how we fight power, this is how we fight the institutions, you're an incompetent fool. That's what you are. You are getting in the way of actually holding the people in power accountable. That's my opinion.
I'm against the cancel culture. That's all I'll say about it. And I've told people I think it's bad to like.
Good, Rob. Good. I'm.
Oh, there he goes.
I'm
an anti-Semite, and you're white power. Shit.
Look at this. Excellent stuff. Okay, that is.
Maybe we'll get on anything, cozy now.
Do you want to? I'll throw it over to you if you want to cover any topics or anything. Exhausted what I want to talk about.
Yeah, one thing
this round.
One thing that I think is worth talking. I brought it up briefly, but I think that there are things, even as someone like me and you that would be distrusting of these institutions, sometimes things occur that are so blatant that it just makes you scratch your head and question everything. What is your take on the fact that the blatant gaslighting from almost every person in our media and the Democratic Party about Biden's cognitive health?
Par for the course. Par for the course.
Well, it's part for the course, but do you think, like, this has been so... I can't think of something that's been as blatant. Like, they'll lie about, like, oh, the border's secure, or the economy's doing well. But something that literally every American for 5 minutes could tune in and see Joe Biden for years and be like, whoa, something's wrong. And they were just like, no, you're crazy. And it worked. And isn't that scary, that sort of that mass hypnosis that's able to occur, and that they're that unethical that they're willing to lie about something so blatant?
Yeah, it's like I said, par for the course. I take it for granted how much the establishment lies. They lie at least as much as the populist grifters, and there are many populist grifters out there, right? For as many, the problem, you can look. It's the ultimate Jordan Peterson point, pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson. Yeah. The line through good and evil. It's not Jordan Peterson's point. It's Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, Gulag Archipelago. Yeah.
Yes, and Viktor Frankl made the same point. Yeah. The line through good and evil runs through everyone's heart. I would say, if whatever side anyone is a part of, the best thing you can do is purge your own side of those people who would drag it down. And if you and I are populists, which I'm increasingly thinking I should...
Enlightened centrist populist, great tag.
Or enlightened populist, we'll merge. The best thing you can do is purge yourself of the people who drag your side down. And this, you can look at any example, like the people protesting Israel on the left. It's like all of the left wing, all of the like actual anti-Semites who were like fuck Jews, like the protests, the left wing protests against Israel, which broadly in sentiment I support, would depend on their ability to excise the actual psycho pro-Hamas jihadists from their own movement. They'd have a lot more credibility. And the same goes for the right-wingers, it's like, well, we believe in Christian ethics, we believe in these things. It's like, okay, you should make sure that you are publicly seen roundly condemning the Westboro Baptist Church type people, Although I'm sure there's probably some of them in your chat.
They love me.
Andrew Wilson.
I don't know. I don't think they would get along. to be honest. But
Westboro Baptist Church, well, they're Protestant.
With the Orthodox, they would.
Although I think Andrew said only like 5 or 10% of his audience is probably Eastern Orthodox, which probably makes sense. There's not that many Eastern Orthodox to begin with.
He's converting. That's the whole point. You want to talk to people that aren't, so you can convert. Yeah, but
fair.
No, I had a lot of fun though. I think that's a great answer, and I mean, I get it. I think that I try. One of the lessons I learned from my dad growing up was I did something stupid with a bunch of the neighbor kids. We were like 11 or 12, and I got yelled at and grounded. So my dad goes out in the yard and yells at me, and then all the neighbor kids that were there while I'm getting yelled at, he's like, "Hey, what are you guys up to?" And he's talking all nice to them. And so I get in the house and I'm like, why are you so mean to me but to them? And he's like, "'Cause you're mine." And that lesson stuck with me. It's like, yeah, you're harder on your own, right? I know, right? And that's, I'll be quite frank. Maybe I shouldn't even say this. I reached out to some of the people that I think are orbiters of the one big streamer we were talking about, who I thought was in a difficult place and was saying some heinous stuff, because I think that maybe some of those things that were being said are going to stick with him for a long time and maybe harm him in ways that he's not anticipating, opportunities that maybe he has, or maybe relationships that he has. Because when you're that inflammatory talking about, haha, that guy just got shot and killed, like that's, and so I can't say anything. You can't say anything, right? But maybe if someone on his own side says something, maybe there'll be more traction, right? And similarly, like, no one's going to, when I talk to someone like Richard Spencer, right, the left's not going to have any luck against talking to Richard Spencer or a white nationalist, because they'll say things like, oh, it's not true that white people are treated like trash in this country. But someone like me will say, yeah, you're absolutely right, they are.
Yeah.
But I disagree with your solution. Like, I think the solutions you're coming up with are insane, and I'll tell you why. And so I do think that there's more ground to be had talking to people on your own side and trying to encourage sort of the direction you want to see the country go on your own side. And to be honest, there's also more damage that could come from your own side. I always say this: until your back's against the wall, you can't push back. So if there's a bunch of people on your side that are sabotaging you, whether intentionally or unintentionally, oftentimes that's more detrimental than the people on the other side.
Amen. Do you know Josiah from Pondering Politics?
Yeah.
Have you spoken to him before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I may. This is Rob. This is certainly not the last time we talk, and perhaps not the last time in the span of a week or so. I may reach out to you soon and set something up with a left winger who. Yeah,
I've talked to Josiah. Knows me. I think he's on friendly terms with me. I'm sure he'd do a stream with me.
Well, look, Josiah's kind of a fascist himself. I don't know if you've ever seen what he said about the Supreme Court, but he was like, I think Biden should just ignore the Supreme Court.
Ignore it, pack it.
Interesting.
Democracy, baby.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that I think is funny is like, well, the Supreme Court, we didn't get to the immunity case. I don't care about that right now. We can't come to it at a later date. But, the people are saying, well, the Supreme Court is compromised. It's fascist now. It gave Trump complete immunity to order SEAL Team 6 to kill off a rival. It's like, okay, so you admit democracy is fundamentally already compromised? So then what are we saving if Trump is a threat to it and all these different things? It's like, it's all
weren't we told about the election being stolen that we have to trust the courts? But then as soon as the courts say, hey, by the way, Trump has presumptive immunity over certain things, they're like, we can't trust the courts. They're fascist.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, what?
Anyway, any final things or...
No. I appreciate it. Come on anytime. I'm going to try to set up some more like panel discussions, hopefully with the Crucible here, maybe after the election. I don't know, I'm an old man. But if you'd be interested, let me know, or any potential topics.
I don't do panels anymore. If it's, I will do
one-on-one.
Like one-on-one or 3 people. As soon as it gets 4 might be the absolute max. And
I agree.
More than that, my experiences are deeply subpar, I will say.
Can be fun sometimes, but it's not. Rarely that there's something intellectual that comes out in a panel of more than 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, three is probably the most. But like I said, this is not the conversation. This is not the last time we're speaking.
All right, man.
Certainly in any short period of time.
Well, I appreciate it, and hit me up anytime, man. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk again.
Godspeed, Rob.
All right, take it easy, man.
Peace.
Enlightened populist, love it.
Enlightened populist. Peace.
All right, good stuff. There we go. We got a Trump supporter on board. We did it. And I do get where he's coming from regarding sort of reining in your own. So we got some Crucible people here, so I will talk briefly about, again, the debate last night, just some discussion I've been having today. Now, I personally, if I was Andrew Wilson, I would have given a definition of insurrection in that debate, but it wasn't relevant. the question you have to ask yourself when you enter a debate like that is, what is the purpose of this debate? For example, I could set up a debate with you and say 2 + 2 is 4. And you say, okay, you're in that debate. And I'm like, here's all the ways 2 + 2 is 4. And you might be like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. But if I'm saying, and therefore we need to use physical violence against my political opponents, you'd be like, whoa, right? Nope, we're only here to talk about if 2 + 2 is 4. We don't want to talk about the rest of it. The reason that Andrew Wilson's having this conversation with Destiny in the first place is because Destiny's basically making this argument that so many on the left are making, that you're fair game for violence or you deserve violence if you supported Trump because he did something that's so heinous. He supported an insurrection. And so the problem is, words like insurrection aren't words, they're not like words that have just a complete stable meaning, right? Like, so like a word like house, although that's not even a good example, like Congress. We have an idea of, we'd be able to define, or the judicial branch, right? Insurrection's a term that even our courts don't really have. It's in, like, in the U.S. Code, there are insurrection, it's illegal to commit insurrection. I think it's punishable up to 10 years, but it doesn't really specifically define it. And there are dozens upon dozens of definitions you can find. We all have a general idea of what an insurrection is. Like, to me, just off the top of my head, what I said before is like a gathering of people set on committing violence to overthrow the government. Somewhere in there, roundabouts, there's the general idea we all have of the term insurrection. And so, basically, Andrew's position is as follows. Listen, he speaks first. He's like, hey, remember, the context of this conversation is Destiny wants to demonize his opponents, which Andrew calls out in his opening statement. And basically, Andrew's saying from the get-go, he's like, look, I'm open. If you want to say that insurrection is so broad that it includes a bunch of Democrats, fine, I'll accept that. But then you've lost the moral high ground. You don't get to act like the other side are these demons because you're admitting that your side engaged in insurrections. Same thing. So then the term sort of becomes meaningless. Oh, now what do we do? Both sides are insurrectionists. Okay. What do we do here? Right? So in that point, what does Destiny respond with? Reads a definition of insurrection that's incredibly broad, which is exactly the point that Andrew was making. And if you listen, like stylistically listen to Destiny last night, go back and listen to the Piers Morgan thing where Destiny's saying that this firefighter had it coming and he made fun of him for dying. Listen to the clip that Andrew played where he's talking to Pisco, where Pisco's like, did you want that bullet to take out Trump? And he's like, I don't know what I could say, like terms of service. I don't want to Fed post myself. But the worst thing that could happen was he to get shot and live. That's the tone he's taking before this debate. But in this debate, we're not talking about any of that. We're just having a very civil discussion about whether or not this meets the definition of insurrection. So the whole debate's clearly going to be around. And what happens is, in a vacuum, he could prove that this is an insurrection, is his hope. And then he could say, see, this is why I'm justified in my beliefs of all the terrible shit that it should happen to these insurrectionists. But the problem is, if the definition he gives is so broad that it includes a bunch of Democrats as well, but it doesn't matter. He's never going to bring that up outside the scope. He'll say, see, I won that debate. January 6th was an insurrection. That's the problem. And so Andrew doesn't need it. Like I said, I would have given a definition, but Andrew doesn't need it. And had Andrew given a definition, Destiny would have either just said, no, that's bullshit, or he would have said, well, it meets your definition too. And there was a lot that went on. I'm not going to say Andrew did perfect, but no one ever does perfect. I would have done things differently than Andrew throughout the course of the debate, but Andrew gets to the best point, which is, okay, but dude, according to you, a bunch of hippies that are smoking weed and protesting weed laws, and then 2 or 3 of them get in a clash with police, that's it. That's an insurrection. The whole thing was an insurrection because 2 or 3 of the 1,000 clashed with police. That's all it takes. And Destiny basically has to bite the bullet and say yes. At that point, wouldn't Destiny's rhetoric apply to those people as well? And given that Destiny said in the clip that Andrew played in the beginning from the debate that I had with him in the past, that violence against public institutions is just the other side of the coin to voting, tantamount to saying he supports insurrections that are on his side. That's the problem. So the way I tried to explain this morning, the idea I came up with, because so many of Destiny fans are like, but Andrew didn't even give a definition. And Andrew's making the correct argument, but I don't have to. You're the affirmative. The topic was January 6th an insurrection? Andrew's like, I don't know, let's see. And Destiny's like, yeah, here's my definition. And Andrew's like, but there's a lot of problems with your definition. That's the whole debate. He doesn't have to provide a counter definition. Again, I would have, but he doesn't have to. The way I come up with this is like, let's say the debate prompt was, is Destiny tall? That's the prompt. Is Destiny tall? Now, how do you define tall? Well, we all have an understanding of what tall means, like sort of someone of above average height. That's tall, right? Someone of above average height. Or maybe you say of exceptional height. And choose your, adjective. But what's that? What's average height? What's exceptional height? Well, we don't know. Is average height 6 foot? Is average height 5'8"? So if that's the topic and Andrew comes into the debate and says, I don't know. I don't really have a definition of the word tall. But I mean, if Destiny wants to admit that everyone's tall, that's his definition. I'll say, sure, dude, you're tall. Just like everyone else. Let's see what Destiny says. And Destiny says, my definition of tall is any human being over 2 feet in height. That's tall. And so based on that definition, I'm tall. Andrew doesn't have to provide a counter definition to say, yeah, that definition's shit. It's too broad. Destiny could say, well, what's your definition? And Andrew could say, I don't know exactly what I would say, but I know 2 feet is ridiculous. You see? You don't need a definition. And then I actually had an argument with, Destiny's prep man, Pisco, who starts chiming in about this. And he uses an analogy that just blows my mind. Blows my mind. He's like, well, it's like if I had a definition of woman that included tree, a tree in it, wouldn't you then have to argue, no, this is the definition? I said, no, let's take that exact example. Let's say I can't define exactly what a woman is. I have a general idea of what a woman is, but I've never actually sat down and thought, what's the exact definition? And I'm like, all right, is Dylan Mulvaney a woman is the topic. I'm like, okay, let's hear what your definition of woman is. And his definition of woman that he gave me is a person with a vulva or a tree. I would, without having to give my own definition of woman, I would say, yeah, your definition's shit. That's absolute shit. It's far too broad because it includes trees. And Pisco's like, well, but if you're going to make the accusation that my definition's too broad, then I get to argue why narrow definitions are bad. That's fine. You could make that argument. And the way that this plays out in the debate between Destiny and Andrew is when Destiny brings up historical examples of insurrections that must be included in any definition of the term insurrection. So he says like Nat Turner Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay. Let's say that's hypothetically true, that we would prefer a broader definition to a narrow definition. The broader definition has to encompass these actions that have occurred in the past. That still doesn't mean his definition can't be too broad, right? So go back to the tree woman example. Even if we say, well, we want a broad definition of what woman is, it's still too broad to say tree. And that's their example that they came up with, just so you can see how diluted they are. Yes, I don't need to provide a counterexample. If you come up to me and go, hey man, do you have an exact definition for the word woman? And I say, I guess not. And you're like, yeah, woman, that tree right there, that's a woman. I could be like, yeah, that's bullshit. He can't be like, oh, but you didn't have an exact definition. Maybe not, but I know that's not a woman. Someone else used this example, and this is a classic example you hear in philosophy. What about the term chair? I said, okay, what about the term chair? Define chair. Go ahead. It's harder than you would think. He defined it as a seat for an individual, typically with 4 legs and a back. I said, typically is doing a lot of work. That would imply that you could have a chair without a back or without 4 legs. Can I have a 3-legged chair? Can I have a 5-legged chair? Can I have a chair without a back? He's like, yeah, I guess you could. I was like, okay, then my coffee table's a chair. Right? 4 legs? You could sit on it. He's like, well, no. Why not? Now, the whole point is It's really hard to come up with a specific definition of the word chair. Just like it might be hard to come up with a specific definition of the word insurrection. But if you're debating someone and they say, my definition of the word chair includes any unit that has mass, any solid object is a chair. Any. That grizzly bear over there, that's a chair. The moon, it's a chair. That skyscraper, it's a chair. That has broadened the definition of chair so widely that the term becomes meaningless. The same with insurrection. If you say insurrection, and the reason we're using that term is because it's something that's so bad, it's so terrible, and then you're like, yeah, you want to know like insurrection, like a hippie smoking weed that's protesting, and his friends get together to protest weed laws, and two of them get in a fight with police, that's an insurrection. That's fucking nothing. That's nothing. That's the whole point. The affirmative claim was January 6th was an insurrection. Destiny's the one who has to defend that. The burden of proof is on him. He gave a shit definition. Let's see. I'll try to chum in an argument here real quick. So then, today, as I'm arguing this, and I'm arguing with Pisco, this guy Avi, who I assume is a Destiny orbiter, he's like, here's what you should do. You have to agree on the term before the debate. Well, that's shit. What? So you should take the standard legal definition of the term insurrection and then use that. And Pisco's like, oh, that's great. What do you think Pisco said? Just imagine Pisco's the person giving Destiny all of his ideas, because that's basically what's happening. What do you imagine Pisco's standard legal definition of the term insurrection was? Anybody have a guess? So the way this debate is being proposed is we both have to agree that this is the standard legal definition. And then we have to argue whether or not January 6th meant that or not. Someone says there is no standard legal definition. Yeah, I know. But what do you think they'll claim it was? I'll spoil it for you. No, he didn't use this. You know what he used? The exact definition that Destiny used. Isn't that convenient? You see, they read this paper about insurrections, and this guy read a bunch of court cases about the Whiskey Rebellion and about other insurrections in the past. And after reading those, he said, here are the 4 criteria for insurrection. So that's it. That's the standard legal definition. See? So then the offer is proffered to me. How about we do this debate, Rob, and you agree that this is the standard legal definition, and then we decide whether or not January 6th was. And I said, I've already debated you on January 6th. How about we do Black Lives Matter? How about that? How's that sound? We'll take your definition, we'll say that's the definition we should use, and then we'll look at Black Lives Matter. Sound good? And he's like, well, no, we'll do Black Lives Matter with January 6th. I said, no, I already did January 6th. Let's do Black Lives Matter. Right? Well, I'll do that, but I want to do January 6th as well. No. You want to know why? You want to know why I said that? Because what they want to do is look at January 6th in a vacuum. Just like Destiny wanted to do. They'll go off and say, Trump should be kept off the ballot. Or Destiny will say, assassination attempt, maybe it should have succeeded. And that firefighter deserved to die. They say all this fucking crazy stuff that they want done. And they're like, okay, let's just debate in a vacuum. Was this an insurrection? Oh, it was? Then all that shit we said's justified. I know what they were doing. That's why I said, let's just do it about Black Lives Matter. If we had the debate with Black Lives Matter, here's what would have happened. I said, Destiny or Pisco, whoever I'm debating, here's your definition, correct? Yep. And you're saying this is a standard legal definition? Yep. Okay. Here's what Black Lives Matter did. In this instance, was this an insurrection? And he would have to be like, yeah. And I would say, great. And so you think that any Democrats that engaged with that should be kept off the ballots, correct? Right? Destiny would think those people that are now voting for Democrats, if they get shot, they had it coming, right? You know what they would have said? Well, January 6th was worse. And I would say, whoa, that's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. We're not here to talk about January 6th. We're talking about this. I don't want to hear January 6th. That's whataboutism. And they would have said, we know what you're doing. Really, do you? You know what I'm doing? You mean like what you do to us all the time? My entire political argument with these people over and over again is the two-tier system of justice that we have in this country. How it's corrupt. How if Trump mishandles classified documents, the book gets thrown at him. But if Hillary or Biden does it, well, it's all roses. Immunity, and you're just a feeble old man. We're not going to charge you. So no, I'm not going to do a debate where I have to concede that your paper that you read is the standard legal definition. I strongly suspect that whatever standard legal definition means, that that's not the case, that this random paper. One of the reasons I believe that that's strongly not the case is because given that definition, we have seen dozens upon dozens of insurrections just in the past 5 years, and none of them have been charged. Not one of them has had someone charged. In fact, the last time someone got charged under the U.S. Code that encompasses insurrection was 1954, and that was when some Puerto Rican nationals from an extremist movement broke into the Capitol and started firing guns. Hardly anything like happened on January 6th. And even if that is the standard legal definition, we could say this oftentimes in law. There are laws that technically we're breaking all the time. Like, I remember one time I was charged with drunken public and disorderly conduct here in Pennsylvania. Let me see if I could look this up. Here is the Pennsylvania Code definition of disorderly conduct. This is what I was charged with. I believe this is it. Disorderly conduct. Offense defined. A person is guilty of disorderly conduct if, with intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, he engages in fighting or threatening, or violent behavior, makes unreasonable noise, uses obscene language or gesture, or creates a hazard of physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate person of the actor. So you tell me what annoyance means, or an unreasonable noise. When I got charged with it, I said, I wasn't committing disorderly conduct. And the police officer said, yeah, you were. He's like, we could charge almost anyone with driving down the road with your window down, radio's playing a little loud. That's unreasonable noise, disorderly conduct. Yell at your wife, don't forget the bread. That's disorderly conduct. Yeah, it causes an inconvenience. Obscene language, what's that? Right. It's written so loosely that technically you could probably bust almost everyone for disorderly conduct almost every day. And the cop told us that. He's like, yeah, if we get someone we don't know what to charge them with, we just slap disorderly conduct. That's right, purposely vague to incriminate. Now, what Pisco and Destiny might say something like this. Anyone who's ever committed disorderly conduct should not be allowed to be on a ballot. I'm not saying they said that, but hypothetically. And you'd be like, okay. And they'd say, isn't the standard definition of legal disorderly conduct this? And you'd say, yeah. And you'd go, technically, didn't you commit that? I guess. Okay, you shouldn't be allowed to be on a ballot. And you'd be like, yeah, but that's literally every Democrat that ran too. That's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. We're not focused on that. We're just saying you should be kept off the ballot. That's it. That's all we're saying. But that's like literally everyone. Whataboutism. We're only focused on this. That's what they're doing with insurrection. I actually got Pisco to admit, which I'll admit I was being a little bit of a bastard about this. Let's see if I can bring this up. I said, after all this crying and screaming, Pisco finally admits that the left-wingers in this country had riots and things like BLM and Antifa, groups who were largely supported by Democrat politicians, were in fact insurrectionists. I don't believe Trump and his supporters were insurrectionists. Pisco does believe that the left were, and yes, he's supporting these traitors for office. And yet he cries and cries with how horrible the Republicans are supporting insurrectionists. Here's what he says. In good faith, I will answer that what I take to be many, probably dozens and dozens, but still a tiny minority, over the course of America's history, of left-wing protests that have standardly used legal definition of insurrection under U.S. law. What would you say about January 6th? Nice still words at mealy mouth. Okay. The left's committed insurrections. Kamala Harris promoted a bail fund after the left-wing insurrection in Minneapolis. That's worse than anything Trump did after January 6th. She's supposed to be kept off the ballot? Are people that go to a Kamala Harris rally effing around and finding out? Like Destiny said about people who go to a Trump rally? Yeah, there was a guy in some state that they said was part of the insurrection, was barred from withholding office. No one was charged with insurrection. I don't think anyone's been charged since 1954. Other than January 6th, I'm unaware of anyone, based on the 14th Amendment, Section 3, since the Civil War that's been kept off a ballot because of an insurrection. So the idea that they want to be like, oh, you have to agree to these terms before the debate. What? That's what it all comes down to. Semantically, can we investigate something to the T and say, technically it meets this definition so that we could go after Trump? And each of these things is in a vacuum. Technically, can we stretch the boundaries of law to say that even though the FEC didn't say that Trump committed campaign finance violations, we're going to say he did by this porn star that was trying to extort him getting paid. And that's beyond the statute of limitations. So we'll try a novel legal theory that's literally never been done to anyone in the state of New York, but we're going to use it for the first time ever to go after the front runner for president and former president. And what we'll say is this, that Donald Trump falsified records in order to commit a crime to influence the election that was basically to falsify records or commit tax fraud or to commit finance violations. All of these problems, technically, if you look at all these things, technically, can it mean it? Can it mean it? And if you sit there and research, can you convince an audience of people that? Yeah, but it takes away the big picture, which is, but you're specifically targeting them and going after this, and you're ignoring. For example, we know Hillary Clinton at least twice now, her Hillary for America and other DNC. We know they committed campaign finance violations. They falsified records according to the campaign finance violations. Okay, why isn't Alvin Bragg charging them? Well, show me once Pisco or Destiny or Avi or any of these other people when there was left-wing insurrectionists occurring. Show me once them calling it out contemporaneously. That's an insurrection. We need a massive FBI investigation. We need to find out who sponsored them. We need to find out who was connected. We need a massive committee in Congress. Show me them ever saying it. Pisco's admitting that there's been left-wing insurrections, presumably with the Black Lives Matter, etc. Show me him admitting it in contemporaneous time. Where is it? I thought we took insurrection seriously. So seriously, says Destiny, that anyone who supports someone who is engaged in an insurrection has it coming if they're shot. Where is it? Oh, well, we can't do that. But, Rob, will you agree with the debate with us where we say that the standard legal definition is this exact definition that I've used, and we agree that that's the legal definition, and then we say, does what January 6th did, does that meet that? Will you agree with that? No. That's not what I'm going to do. That's the whole point. That's the game. Old School. Sorry if I missed any super chats. Old School for $10 says, I'm voting for Trump because the Dems need to face some penalty for their lawfare. If they think they can get away with it, they'll continue to do it and our nation will eventually fall. Yeah, they would do it to DeSantis. They would do it to whoever. Any Republican candidate that would be outside sort of the establishment, they're going to do this to. And they'll keep getting away with it until there's consequences. So, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to wrap up, man. You're not going to see me until at least Monday, but I need to take some time off. I need to hang out with my family tonight. This is the last night I got with them, then I got to go into work. I am a bit of a boomer. That's definitely true. So, yeah, it should be an interesting week coming up. I hope everyone enjoys it. Listen, don't hate people. Don't get super mad at Destiny, Pisco, any of these people. They're a little salty. They got wrecked in a debate last night. It's okay. It happens. It's pretty embarrassing when it's their big issue and they got wrecked. But just know that. They've broadened the definition of insurrection to mean hippies smoking weed, protesting weed laws. Insurrection, baby. So when you hear them go, oh my God, January 6th, I remember the day, the insurrection. Oh my God. It was the worst day for this country since those hippies at that Fish concert clashed with security, pissed about weed laws. My God! Yeah, that's them. So, what's up, Sparky? All right, guys, thank you so much. Take it easy. I'll see you all soon. As always, have a good one.